Hi and welcome back to The Books Are Everywhere. Today I am here to talk about the books I read in July and August. I'm always so late about doing these monthly wrap-ups that the past 2 times I've ended up doing double ones. So I did May and June in one go, and now I'm doing July and August in one go. And it's still late because it's still a third of the way through September. But oh well, here I am to wrap up the books I read in both July and August. If my memory serves me well, which it will not, and I will have to look up what happened in some of these books, to be honest. Especially the first one, which is Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. I read a lot of Tessa Bailey books in one go. I did not enjoy them, and then I've unhauled them. So honestly, I don't have a lot of the books on this to hand, so I will have to put covers up here for a lot of them. But I feel like all of the Tessa Bailey books just felt the same to me. But this one was following Natalie Voss, who lost her job and her fiance and moves back home to Napa. I think it's Napa, yeah. To lick her wounds, rejoin the family. They have some kind of vineyard, I think. I honestly cannot even remember. She wants to finance a new business venture, but she can't get hold of her trust fund unless she gets married, because that's the rule that her dad set. It's also following August Cates, who has a vineyard. No, she wasn't. Her family, maybe her family did own a vineyard, but she was a wine critic basically. But anyway, August Cates is the love interest. He owns a vineyard, but he doesn't know anything about making wine, and he's doing it to basically carry on his best friend's legacy because his best friend passed away and he wanted to own a vineyard. Yeah, so he wants a loan from the bank to turn around the profits of his vineyard. And then they end up meeting and deciding to basically have a marriage of convenience. But obviously things change, things happen from there. So they want to just get married, live together for a few weeks, get divorced again. Obviously it's also following their friends and both their families and all of the complications with the money stuff. I feel like a lot of Tessa Bailey's books have the same beats to them. It's just following a different kind of really random or niche interest, like winemaking, which just felt really random to me. I don't often really like the characters. I read 3 of them and I'm definitely giving up now. I just owned 3 Tessa Bailey books, so I read them all in one go, just to get them read. But I rated this one 2.5 stars. I just find that the female characters always seem really spoiled and I don't really like them, and it's almost like they try and have a redemption arc but it just doesn't work for me. And then the male characters are always this broody, but they've got they're grumpy. They've got a soft core for the love interest. It just feels very predictable and I just don't find much enjoyment in them. They often also seem to focus around money. There's a lot of similarities between this and the other ones I read, even though they were completely different topics. So yeah, I was not a big fan of that one. I feel like I should go straight from that to talking about a Fangirl Down, which I do remember more of. I listened to all of these on audio and I have no complaints about the audiobooks. I think they were fine. This one is following, can't remember either of the characters' names, following a fangirl to a grumpy golfer who is down on his luck. He's not doing very well, and his fangirl, this main character, is basically staying with him through anything, even though he's doing really badly at his golfing and he's looking really bad in the limelight too, and he's not really acting very well in the face of having a public image. She's really into golf and she runs a golf shop, which I can't remember if that's linked to what her family did or not, but also she's down on her luck. The golf shop gets wrecked in a storm, and then the golfer kind of offers to help her out. This just felt really weird. It felt a bit creepy actually. The start of this book when she was the fangirl to this golfer just felt really strange, and the fact that she was following him around like a puppy was his only fan, and he obviously had some kind of feelings about that. It just felt really strange, and then they ended up working together off the back of her being this big fan. Just felt weird. And there was also some money stuff in there that I didn't like and just felt so reminiscent of reading Unfortunately Yours, and it just felt so predictable. I actually rated that one 2 stars, and I also can't remember if there was some like sex stuff that I just didn't really like. Yeah, I think it was the Tess Bailey books where the sex stuff was just a bit on edge for me, like it was on the edge of just being a bit too much, and always seemed to want to introduce something that there was like one sex scene in each book that would try and like set it apart from the rest, and I didn't really vibe with that or the sex scenes in general, to be honest. So yeah, was not a big fan of the Tessa Bailey books. I read It Happened One Summer, Unfortunately Yours, and Fangirl Down, and rated none of them higher than 2.5 stars, and have since unhauled them. So there we go. Moving on to a very, very different book, and that is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. It took me so long to read this, but I finally finished it like halfway through July. And the thing was, when I actually got to sit down with this book, I flew through it quite quickly. I just had no motivation to pick it up, and I felt like I left it somewhere for like a week or two, and I didn't even have it in my house. But this one is The Great Norse Myths, retold by Neil Gaiman. I've never been a massive mythology, maybe not fan, but I haven't grown up with them. I don't really know a lot about the stories, so I'm probably coming from a place of like not being the ideal reader for this book anyway. But I was hoping that these would be very accessible and would make me interested in the stories. Sadly, I found them very forgettable, and honestly, after I read the stories, I would forget them pretty much instantly, which maybe says more about me than about this book. I did enjoy them while I was reading them, and I felt like it had a lot of atmosphere to it. I've also never given this a rating, but I feel like about 3 stars is probably right, because I don't really have a lot of complaints. I do feel like this book was good, and I really liked the atmosphere and I felt more enthralled when I was reading them. It's more just coming away from this story, I kind of knew that I would forget them pretty instantly, and I didn't really have a lot of motivation to pick this up. I did like the fact that this was a lot of short stories, and I found that bit quite accessible. But yeah, this maybe just was more not for me than being objectively bad. And maybe I just need to accept that I'm not really into the myths rather than trying to force myself, or maybe I should read more non-fiction to learn about like Greek and Norse mythology before pursuing things like this, because then I just get confused. So there we go. The next book I read was Keedie by Elle McNicoll. I say the next book I've read, this has been pretty much out of order, or in very rough order so far, but I read Keedie by Elle McNicoll at the start of July. This one is 0.5 in the A Kind of Spark series, and it's following Keedie, who is Addie's older sister. So Addie is the main character in A Kind of Spark. Keedie is a side character who you know is also neurodivergent, and Addie really looks up to Keedie, but by the time A Kind of Spark is written or is set, Keedie is in college, I think, and is not really in the house that much. There's a few scenes with her, but not too much. This one is following Keedie as she is around Addie's age. I think she was around 12 maybe in this one. It's very short, it's just 200 pages, a very quick read. I got through this one like in a couple of days. It was very quick to read, and I did really enjoy this one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I then read By Rowan and You by Melissa Harison. I borrowed this one, so I'll put the cover here, but I really enjoyed this one. It is inspired by The Little Grey Man by BB, and it's following these little characters who live in the woodland, and it's also very nature focused and very focused on kind of the seasons and the nature in the UK and Britain, and it's just a very beautiful book. And these characters, I just love them so much. I think I put these as like my favourite characters in my mid-year wrap-up, because I just love the characters so much. I find these stories so wholesome and so just warm, especially for the age group, because these are like children middle grade. They're just so lovely. It's such a found family aspect, and they're also emotional, and it's just so cute. And this book was more focused on them getting help from humans and also help from other people, because they're like these are all like gnome type characters. And it was just so cute, and I really love this series. I then also went on to read The Little Grey Man by BB, and this is from 1942. This is the book that inspired by Ash Oakenthorn and by Rowan and You by Melissa Harison, and I really like these two. Again, just has this real fan family aspect. It's following the little grey men, which are these like gnome type characters that live in the woodland. Very much you can see how By Ash Oakenthorn was inspired by this, because they do have the same kind of beats of the plot in a way, but I still really enjoyed this and it felt really like a warm hug. So do the Melissa Harison books. I love how focused on nature they are, and this one was just, it was such a heartwarming book to read, just such a like warm and just like a warm hug. It was so lovely. And I gave By Rowan and You 4.5 stars and The Little Grey Men 4 stars. I then read The Measure by Nikki Erlick, which is one I've had on my shelf for a couple of years, although I don't have it right now, so I'm going to just put a picture of it here because it's being lent out at the moment. But I enjoyed this one. This is one I've had as a proof copy since it came out in I think 2022, yeah. And I listened to this as an audiobook and I did quite enjoy it. It's essentially following the premise of everybody in the world receiving these boxes with pieces of string in them, and the pieces of string determine how long you are going to live. There is so many moral dilemmas off the back of this. Do you look at how long your string is? Do you leave the box closed forever? And then obviously if you open it, you're going to then know when you're going to die. What if your partner wants to look and you don't, or your friends or your family? There were just so many levels to this. This book was very much focused on the societal impacts of these boxes being sent out, rather than the mystery of why the strings had been sent out in the first place, which was kind of what I thought it would be focused on. So I wouldn't say I was let down by that, but I would say go into it with that expectation of it being about the societal impact, rather than about the kind of sci-fi aspect of how these boxes came to be and why they appeared. You don't get to learn that at all, and I feel like I'd have rather known that go in, so I'm fine with like telling you guys that. But I still really enjoyed this. I thought it was such an interesting concept, and it's why I've lent it out, because I want the person I've lent it to kind of read it as well, and I thought they would really enjoy it too. So I did really enjoy it. As I said, it just had this like focus on societal impact, which is so interesting, and it followed such a range of characters as well, so you really got to see the impact for different people. So yeah, a very interesting concept, quite well carried out. I would have maybe just liked a little bit more mystery from it, which you obviously didn't get because it never went into trying to uncover where they came from in the first place. So something a little reminiscent of An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, but with less of that mystery element and more of the societal side. But I still really enjoyed it and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. I read this one for a book club that I then couldn't attend, but I did want to read this anyway, so I decided to pick it up. This copy is beautiful and I've had it since it came out, so I wanted the motivation to pick this one up. This one is following Effie, who has always believed in fairy tales, and she loves this fairy tale of the Fairy King, which is in Angahard, and I've never said that out loud. I don't know. Which is a fairy tale by someone called Emrys Mirrodin. Oh my god, I've never said this, and I didn't listen to an audiobook, so I don't know how these are pronounced. But it's about a mortal girl who falls in love with the Fairy King and then destroys it. She wins a competition basically to go and design the author's house, like redesign the house, because this house has been left to ruin. The author has since passed away and is owned by his son. So she goes to this house to basically redesign it. And there she meets Poston, who is a stodgy? Never heard somebody be described as stodgy, but that's what it says in the synopsis. He's a stodgy young literature scholar who is studying the papers from this author and is determined to prove that her favourite author is a fraud. The two rival students end up working together, and I just love this. It was so good. It was so atmospheric. It was quite dark. It was darker than I expected, and it was like quite creepy. It had such atmosphere to it though. It was so beautifully written and I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed this more than I think I expected to like this. I really liked these two characters and how they worked together. and I feel like their friendship was quite genuine, and it reminded me of like the Alison Saft book, A Dark and Wilder Magic, I think it's called. It definitely has similar vibes to that, and I really like the fantasy aspects. It's also the university that the main character, I've forgotten her name already, Effie, attends, is set on Lake Bala, and that is a lake in North Wales. I don't know if it's actually meant to be the same lake because this is set in this fantasy land. If it is based on the Welsh countryside, I love it even more. And I felt like I was thinking that throughout the book, so I loved it for that. But yeah, I really liked this. I would just say definitely content warnings for sexual abuse in here. It definitely did feel like a punch in the gut every time it was mentioned, and it is mentioned quite a lot and is quite integral to the story, so I did want to just like put a warning on here for those darker themes, because I did find that quite visceral, and it was very much an honest account of how Effie was feeling, so I feel like it's worth saying if you're going to go into this book, just be aware of that. But I really, really loved this. I gave this one 4 stars, but I feel like I should maybe up it to 4.5. The next book was House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas. I simply have just put the cover here because it's on the top shelf and I cannot be bothered to get this down because it's on the top of my bookcase. This is the 3rd book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J Maas, and I did not like it, which I don't think is an unpopular opinion. But yeah, I was not a big fan of this. I'm not the biggest fan of this series anyway. I don't really vibe with urban fantasy that much. I much prefer historical type fantasy like Sarah J Maas's other works, like A Curse of Roses and Thorns. Why is that just Court of Thorns and Roses? There we go. I much prefer that series. That is one of my favourite series. I love Throne of Glass. I'm not a big fan of Crescent City, to be honest. I liked the first book. I think I gave that 4 stars. I did enjoy the second book, and the end really got me gripped, wanting to read the 3rd book, and I was excited for this one, but I just did not vibe with it, and I feel like nothing really happened. It is such a long book, and I cannot tell you anything that happened in that book. I read it over 2 weeks with my friend Alex. We did a buddy read, and it was probably the only way I was going to actually get to it and get through it. But honestly, I just can't remember. It's just, no. The first one is following a main character who I literally can't remember the name of. Why can I not remember her name? Bryce Quinlan. It's following Bryce as her best friend dies and is brutally murdered, and she ends up being assigned this like bodyguard in Hunt, who is an angel of death, I want to say. Can't remember his title. And they end up like living together, and it's following them and their romance, but also this like mystery surrounding her friend Danica's death. Goes on from there, and it's a very, very complex fantasy series, which I just can't be bothered to understand at this point. I gave this one 2.5 out of 5 stars. I feel like I've gotten very brutal with like... there's 3 books in this that are rated less, like 2.5 or 2 stars. 2 Tessa Baileys in this book. But honestly, I feel like other people have said this, but I don't know if I will continue reading Sarah J Maas books. Like, I probably will read the next thing she writes, but if it's in the same universe as this, if it's in the Crescent City world, I don't know if I can be bothered. If it's something completely different, then I probably will. But I am definitely, like, losing faith in her books and the fact that I will enjoy them, because this was just not for me. The next book I read was Cross the Line by Simone Solanti. This one is an Afterlight book, but I listened to the audiobook of it, and it's an F1 romance. This one's following Dev Anderson. His career has really gone down the panel. It's on the line. And it's mainly because of a social media disaster that leaves him with an angry team and sponsors who are threatening to kind of get rid of him. But he wants to save face, and he ends up hiring his best friend's sister? Yeah, his best friend's little sister, who is Willow, who is just recently graduated from college doing like marketing or social media or something, and hasn't got a job and wants a job. They end up being kind of thrown together. She's really into F1, so she kind of follows them around anyway. And I did enjoy this one. It was predictable and cheesy, but I did feel like there was a spark between the characters and I did enjoy it. It was a very fun book. I listened to the audiobook, which I did enjoy. So I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. I wouldn't say it was anything particularly special, but it was fun and I did enjoy it. So there's that. I then read Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I've had this one on my shelf for ages and I listened to the audiobook of this, which I wasn't sure about because I do struggle with fantasy audiobooks. I'm focusing on them. I try and stick to romance, but sometimes I just want to read something different, or there's something I particularly want to get to and it's just convenient to get to it on audio. This one is following Bree Matthews, whose mother has just died. She wants to escape and she ends up going to this like local college on like a residential program for high schoolers. So she gets away and then she ends up witnessing a magical attack on her first night on campus. Then a mage tries to wipe her memory, but she still remembers everything, and this ends up kind of spiralling. Things end up spiralling from there because it then unlocks the fact that she's got these magical abilities that she didn't know, and she realises that her memory was meant to be wiped on the night that her mum died, but she can still remember things that happened. And then there's this like group called the Legendborn where she's kind of like infiltrated. And the Legendborn reveal themselves to be descendants of King Arthur's knights and foretell a magical war. And she ends up kind of joining them. There's a lot of interesting discussions in here, like friendship and family and coping with her mother's death, and also coping with like finding out all of this stuff about her ancestry after her mother's death and all of these things that her mother didn't tell her when she was alive. And I really enjoyed those parts of it, and I felt this was quite grounded and I really liked that. But there is a lot that lost me towards the end, especially about the Arthurian kind of legends and the King Arthur stuff. I found like that was a really interesting concept, but it didn't really grip me, and I haven't heard the best things about the next book in the series, which I think is called Bloodmarked, so I probably won't be picking it up. I gave this one 3 stars. I did enjoy it, but it didn't really blow me away. But there were some things that I really liked. As I said, it was very grounded and it had some emotional topics in there, which I did enjoy. The next book I picked up was a novel love story by Ashley Poston. I've been listening to Ashley Poston's audiobooks recently and I really love this one. It is following, what's her name, Eileen Merriweather, who loves a good romance but she's stuck in kind of a rut in her life. She's been through a bad breakup. And she ends up, every year she goes on this like retreat with her book club where they go to like a cabin and read loads of books. But this year she ends up being on her own because everyone else has other things to do. She decides to go anyway, but while she's en route to this cabin, her car breaks down and she ends up in this very cute town. And every meet is cute. The rain always comes in the afternoon and the bookshop is always curated with impeccable taste. But it feels too good to be true because this town is out of her favourite romance series, and Eileen is sure that she must be here to bring the town its storybook ending. But there's one character she can't place, the grumpy bookshop owner with mint green eyes and an irritatingly sexy mouth. He does not want Eileen to finish this story, but how else can she find her happily ever after? Honestly, I feel like I've heard bad things about this from some people, and I do understand some of the frustrations with this book. I feel like you just want to shout at Eileen sometimes and be like, how do you not realise where you are? Because for a large part of this book she doesn't realise that she's even in a law return. There's some things that I think I guessed before the reveals, but I still got really enveloped in the story. I loved the characters, I loved the setting. I feel like if you're willing to suspend disbelief and just be drawn into this story, you'll really love it. And it was very cheesy, but I just really liked it. And I loved the kind of twist that Ashley Poston puts on her falling into this like cute little town. It was so fairy tale-esque and I just really enjoyed it. It was so compelling, and I love the audiobooks too of these books, of like Ashley Poston's romance books. So yeah, I really liked this. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And the next book I read was The Dellergut Dream Department Store by Miye Lee. And this is a Korean bestseller, and it's following our main character, who is called Penny, and she ends up working in the Dellergut Dream department store where people come in to buy dreams. It's really interesting, and I feel like it's a very odd book because you don't really know what's happening outside of this department store, and it also feels like this department store is based like not in a real place. Like it's set on another plane to the rest of the world, which is fascinating. I don't really understand how it exists, but I don't think you're really meant to. I think if you can kind of not think about that kind of stuff, then you will get on well with this book. It's definitely a magical realism book, which I did enjoy. It's maybe not completely for me in some ways, but I did still enjoy reading this. And I liked the characters in here a lot. There's a lot of very individual characters in the people that come into the shop and also the people that work in the shop. That's the main kind of point of this book, which I did enjoy. There is going to be another book in this series, which I will probably consider picking up, because I did read the like teaser in the back for the next book, and it definitely sounds like it's going to be set more on Penny's like life outside of the department store, which I would be interested in. I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Last Seen Online by Wren James, and this is another I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars. I read this one in a day, or like an afternoon. I also read this one in like less than a day, and then I picked this one up, read it very quickly. It's a kind of thriller book, a YA thriller. It's following Delilah, who meets Sawyer Saffitz, who is son of Anya Saffitz, who's Hollywood royalty, and she becomes hooked on a decade-old scandal. In her quest for the truth, Delilah uncovers blog posts written by the mysterious Gotti Wrights, and is soon caught up in a world of greed, fandom conspiracy theories, and murder. But the deeper Delilah digs, the more dangerous it becomes. Someone is willing to kill to hide the truth. This one was very riveting, very compelling, very on edge, and I feel like if you enjoyed The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by the same author, you will definitely enjoy this, because it has similar kind of vibes with the like intense nature of this. It's told partly in text, partly in blog posts. Definitely like a mixed media format, and it's adapted by like an online thing that Wren James did with the same, I think it was called Gotti Wrights. I think Wren basically invented the blog, and then this is adapted from that. It was very clever. I feel like in some ways it was maybe a little bit young for me, maybe a little bit predictable, or a little bit over the top in places, like you couldn't quite believe everything that was happening, but I did still really enjoy this, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next one I picked up was Moonstruck by various different authors. This one is set in a little college town of Blytheton, and there's fantasy creatures who live cosy normal lives right out alongside humans. There's a werewolf barista called Julie who strives to be the most normal at all. But all heck breaks loose when she and her new girlfriend Selena go on a disastrous first date that ends up with a magician casting a horrible spell on their friend Chet. Now it's up to the team of mythical pals to stop the illicit illusionist before it's too late. I didn't enjoy this one as much as I wanted to. I still gave it 3 stars, and I did like things about this. I liked the characters, I liked the setting, and I liked the artwork. This is a graphic novel, but I just feel like I was not as compelled by this story as I wanted to be. I don't think I will continue with the series. I think this is just collecting 1 to 5. This is like the first volume. Yeah, I feel like I wanted more from this, and it also just felt a little bit odd in places. There's some stuff in here that just doesn't really fit and doesn't feel like it makes that much sense, which maybe put me off a bit. And I also feel like I don't really remember that much from it now. So I gave this one 3 stars at the time, but yeah, I probably won't continue with this series, but I'm glad I finally picked it up because it's been on my TBR for a very long time. The next book I read was Queen Bee by Juno Dawson, and this is a prequel to the Her Majesty's Royal Coven series, and this is following the kind of start of the Coven from Her Majesty's Royal Coven. So this is set in 1536, and it's following the story of Anne Boleyn, I believe, and it's a novella, so it's quite short, and it's following Lady Grace Fairfax, who is a perfect English rose, and she's a witch, and she knows that something foul is at play. The Queen has just been beheaded, Someone has betrayed Anne Boleyn and her coven. Grace is wild with loss because Anne wasn't just her leader, she was also her lover. Now she will stop at nothing to track down the traitor. But there's more at stake than revenge. It was one of their own, a witch, that betrayed them, and Grace isn't the only one looking for her. King Henry VIII has summoned the witch-finders, and now no witch is safe. If Grace wants to avenge Anne's death and avoid her own, she will have to do more than disappear. She will have to be reborn. I won't lie, I wasn't a big fan of this. I do love Her Majesty's Royal Coven, and I think it has such an atmosphere, and I really love those stories, and I love the coven in there, but I don't really like historical books, and I've never really read anything from this time period, and I just didn't really enjoy that as a concept, like going back to this time period. I think I would have much preferred something based in the modern Her Majesty's Royal Coven world rather than going back to this. I gave it 3 stars, and I feel like that's about right. I did enjoy it when I read it, and it was very quick to read because it is this novella, and it was compelling, but it just, I don't want to say anything negative about it. I don't think it was bad, I just don't think it was for me, and I don't think it's what I wanted from this story. And I guess I don't necessarily feel like it was necessary to the story of Her Majesty's Royal Coven either. I feel like we didn't really need this in the series, if I'm being brutally honest. So yeah, I gave this one 3 stars. The next book I read was Swallows and Amazons by Arthur Ransom. This is a book from, I think, 1932 or 1930. So this is a 94-year-old book. And I really enjoyed it. It's following the Walker family, or the kids of the Walker family, as they holiday in the Lake District for the summer, and I think they go every year, but this is the year where they've gone out onto the island, onto, what do they call it, Wildcat Island, I think? Yeah, onto Wildcat Island. They camp under open skies, they have this boat, they go fishing, they swim in the water, they go and collect their milk every day on the boat from this like local farm, and they also have a kind of war that breaks out between them and the Amazons, who are this other like set of kids. I really like this. I went to the Lake District earlier this year, and I just loved the vibe of the Lake District in this book. I also read this a lot while I was in Paris, and I feel like it was just comforting to read something that was so quintessentially British and set in this country while I was in another country, and it just captured the Lake District so well. I could picture it so well, and it had the fun aspects of an Enid Blyton book, which I loved when I was a kid. I loved Enid Blyton books. It had the same kind of vibe as like the Famous 5 books. So I really liked that. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. We're in the home stretch. We have 3 more to go. The next one being The Night Animals by Sarah Ann Juckes, and I listened to this one on audio. But oh my god, I didn't know that there was illustrations in this, and it's so cute. Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, I did not know that, but this one is so cute. It is following our main character, Nora. Nora's mom has PTSD, and she has good and bad days. She used to be a paramedic, and at the moment she's kind of at home, and she's kind of trying to like look after herself and her mom, and she starts seeing these ghost animals, these like rainbow shimmering ghost animals. She also makes friends with this kid across the road called Kwame, who joins her on this kind of adventure. She starts to follow the animals, and obviously that's where the title comes from, The Night Animals. Will the night animals give Nora the strength she needs to help her family? This one was such a lovely exploration of PTSD, of mental health issues, of family and friendship, and it was just so heartwarming and lovely. As I said, I listened to this on an audiobook, and because I listen on double speed, it did not take me long to listen to this one. I really liked the audiobook for this, but as I said, I didn't realise this had illustrations in. Now I'm kind of wishing that I had physically read it, because these illustrations are so cute. But either way, this is a beautiful book. I really loved it. It just had such important themes, and I feel like it's a great one for this age range as well. This one's like a middle grade 9 to 12 book, and I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. And the penultimate book is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, and I listened to this one on audio too. Oh, I have a Dead Romantics bookmark in here, which is pretty cool. I listened to the audiobook, so I didn't know there was a bookmark in there. As I said, I've listened to all of the adult romance Ashley Poston books on audio, and I've enjoyed all of the audiobooks. This one is following Florence Day, who is a ghostwriter for one of the world's famous romance authors. She's supposed to be penning a swoon-worthy romance book for this author, but she is struggling. She has a writer's block, and she has just been through a really bad breakup. And she has a strict conversation with her editor, Benji, who refuses to give her an extension on the book. So she starts to kind of try and work up something, but then tragedy strikes and Florence has to head home, where her family are running a funeral home because that's what they've always done. So she heads home and then she sees a ghost, the ghost of her editor, Benji. Things go from there. This one is funny and light-hearted in the way that it discusses death, which I really like the approach it kind of had to death and the conversations that we had about death in this book. It was very interesting in the way that it kind of had that premise, and the way that Florence's family is like running this funeral home in the background of this book. There's also some interesting conversations about her family and the relationships that she has with her siblings and with her parents, and with Benji, who is a ghost. I really didn't know where this was going, although I did guess the twist at the end. Not early on in the book, but towards the end I was like, oh, I can see where this is going to go now, and I did get it right. But I did still enjoy this for what it was. I feel like it was a really fun book, and I did give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I've really enjoyed listening to the Ashley Poston books. Neither this one or the novel Love Story has beat The 7 Year Slip. I loved that book so much, but all of them have this like really wonderful feeling to them, and I feel like there's more than just romance in them as well, which is what I want from romance books now. There's always some kind of magical realism element, like a time slip in The 7 Year Slip, or the ghost element in this one, or the like imaginary town in a novel Love Story, and it always gives you something to try and figure out and look forward to and have like a twist at the end. And even if you think that everything's gonna like work out okay, I was still on the edge of my seat listening to this, so, which is probably unsafe because I was driving. That is a joke. But I do listen to audiobooks when I'm driving a lot. So yeah, I did enjoy this one quite a lot, but not quite as much as The 7 Year Slip. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And last but not least, we are at the end of this video. Thank you so much if you stuck with me. I actually read this one physically. I read Think Again by Jacqueline Wilson. This is Jacqueline Wilson's adult book, which is crazy to me. I grew up reading Jacqueline Wilson books. I absolutely loved her books so much. And this one is following Elle from the Girls in Love series, which is focused around a friendship group of Elle, Magda and Nadine as they grow up, go through puberty and start having like crushes and things like that. And this one is following Elle as a 40-year-old woman with an adult daughter. And it was just so interesting because Jacqueline Wilson somehow captures Ellie's voice in a 40-year-old the same as when she was like 12 in Girls in Love. And I thought that was so clever. I don't know how she did it, but I felt like I was in Ellie's head, and it feels like it brought all of the problems and things from the Girls in Love series and brought them into adulthood, and I felt like that was amazing. This one's following Elle as she feels like she doesn't really have like a proper adult life. She's 40, she has a job, but she's also just about to lose like this freelance gig that she's got, which is very stressful for her. She has an adult daughter, as I said, and she's kind of navigating the relationship she now has with this daughter as the daughter moves away and goes to university. She's also she's on her own, and she does want to find somebody, so we navigate that in this book, which, as I said, that's why it felt kind of reminiscent to the Girls in Love series. It's like they're still talking about boys and talking about like looking for love the same as they were when they were teenagers or young teenagers. So it's really interesting to see it translated. I also loved seeing like Magda and Nadine in this book. There's a lot of characters that come from the books when they were younger into this one. I just loved it. I love being back in this world. I feel like there was a couple of tiny niggles I had with just the way things were worded in here that maybe weren't the best, but overall I really enjoyed this. It was so nostalgic. I really found it compelling and really wanted to just carry on reading it. So I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was almost perfect. It was lovely to read and just, yeah, very unique feeling because of it being Jacqueline Wilson. Very nostalgic feeling. Anyway, that is all of the, I think, 19 or 20 books that I've read in July and August. Hopefully I can read a little bit more in September, but we will see. I feel like that's pretty standard for me at the moment, like 10 books a month. But anyway, I'm gonna go. Thank you so much if you stuck with me to the end of this video. I know it was a bit of a longer one, so thank you if you stuck with me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.